The rain hammered against the cracked windshield of the old cafe as Jennifer Hayes pushed through the door, her shivering 4-year-old daughter clinging to her hand like a lifeline. The cold October wind chasing them inside as if refusing to let them escape the harsh world outside. Warm currents of cinnamon, toasted sugar, and freshly brewed coffee curled around them the moment they stepped in, wrapping mother and daughter in a fragile sense of safety Jennifer had not felt in a long time. Not since her life had collapsed 4 years ago. She had clawed her way into this small coastal town, hoping to build something resembling peace. Little Violet's eyes sparkled at the pastry case, her small finger lifting in wonder toward a chocolate croissant that glistened under the soft yellow lights like treasure calling her name. And despite the weight in Jennifer's chest from counting every dollar in her dwindling bank account, she forced a smile and whispered, "Of course, sweetheart," smoothing Violet's rain-damp curls with a tenderness she had learned to protect at all costs, even when she herself felt she had nothing left. 6 months had passed since Jennifer and Violet had moved to Harborfield, trying to bury the remnants of a life built with a man whose wealth used to place them in magazine pages, and whose secrets had nearly destroyed her. Now, inside this cozy cafe with mismatched vintage furniture and soft chatter, Jennifer felt the same mixture of warmth and fear she felt every Tuesday morning when she tried to create small pockets of joy for her daughter while silently calculating whether she could afford both breakfast and the electric bill looming on the horizon. She had once been married to Marcus Wellington. Yes, that Marcus Wellington, one of the wealthiest and most powerful businessmen in the country, a man whose empire stretched across continents and whose charm held entire boardrooms hostage, and thinking of him still sent a complex, suffocating tangle of emotions through her heart. The divorce 4 years ago had shattered her life into pieces she was still trying to glue back together. It had been her escape from a world built on lies, from a marriage that had turned into a polished cage decorated with luxury, and she had chosen to walk away with nothing except her daughter and her integrity. She lifted Violet into her favorite seat by the window, the same spot where they always sat, and watched the child's little face reflect pure joy, unaware of the storms her mother still carried inside. Jennifer ordered their usual breakfast, but as she handed over her debit card, she braced herself for the possibility that the transaction might decline, a familiar dread that had become her uninvited companion. Relief washed through her when it went through, but it was brief, fragile, because deep down she knew this life, as peaceful as it seemed, had shadows waiting behind it, unanswered questions standing at the edge of her new beginning, waiting for the right moment to surge forward. As Jennifer settled into the seat across from Violet, watching her daughter tear pieces of the croissant and grin in delight, a strange feeling washed over her, an unsettling prickle down her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched. She tried to dismiss it, telling herself it was just exhaustion, just nerves. But then she noticed a man at a corner table lowering his gaze quickly as soon as hers met his. She couldn't see his features clearly beneath the shadow of his cap, but something about his posture, the way he seemed to focus on her every movement, made her stomach tighten. Harborfield was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where no one knew who she used to be, a place where Marcus's name didn't silence rooms or open doors that she wanted firmly shut. She looked away, forcing her breath to steady, but a suspicion she wished she could ignore flickered in her mind. What if the past she worked so hard to escape had finally found her? What if everything she had built for Violet was once again under threat? She reached across the table and touched her daughter's hand, grounding herself in the innocent smile looking back at her. But the cafe suddenly felt smaller, the shadows sharper, and the warmth they had walked into only moments ago seemed to fade beneath the cold realization that something was coming. Something she could feel but could not yet see. Something that would test the fragile peace she had fought for. And as the man in the corner lifted his coffee cup, subtly tilting it in her direction, Jennifer felt a chill spread through her chest, a quiet warning whispering through her mind. The past never stays buried for long. Jennifer forced herself to look away from the man in the corner, pretending to be absorbed in wiping chocolate smudges from Violet's chin. But her heartbeat thudded with a tension she couldn't shake, the kind that whispered danger in the quiet spaces of her mind. She had rebuilt her life carefully, brick by fragile brick, determined never to let her past seep into the small, tender world she had created for her daughter. Yet something about that man's stillness, the way he seemed to study her without blinking, made memories she had fought to bury claw their way back to the surface. She told herself she was being paranoid. Harborfield was too small, too quiet, too far from Marcus's empire for his world to collide with hers again. But the man's presence felt wrong, like a cold fingerprint pressed against the back of her neck. As she finished their breakfast, Jennifer decided not to wait any longer. She scooped Violet into her arms, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door, forcing her pace to remain calm even as every instinct urged her to run. The bell chimed overhead as they stepped into the cold October air, and she barely had time to inhale the damp scent of rain before she caught the reflection of the same man in the cafe window, rising from his seat. Her pulse spiked. She tightened her grip on Violet and turned down a side street, quickening her steps but trying not to appear frantic. Violet rested her head on Jennifer's shoulder, unaware of her mother's panic, humming softly to herself as if the world were still safe, still predictable. When Jennifer reached her car, a 15-year-old hatchback that rattled like its bones were tired, she strapped Violet into her seat as quickly as possible, her hands trembling despite her efforts to stay composed. She risked a glance across the street. The man was now standing outside the cafe, his gaze fixed directly on her like he had been waiting for her to look his way. A chill slid down her spine. She ducked into the driver's seat, started the engine, and pulled away from the curb, her breath fogging the windshield as her mind raced with possibilities she didn't want to confront. For the next mile, she checked her rearview mirror almost obsessively, but she didn't see him following, and slowly, very slowly, the knot in her chest loosened. Maybe it had been nothing. Maybe he was just a stranger. Maybe her fear still came too easily. She drove toward Violet's preschool, the wipers swiping away the mist that clung to the glass, and by the time she pulled into the parking lot, she had almost convinced herself that the morning's unease had been just another ghost from her past. Jennifer kissed Violet goodbye, waved as her daughter disappeared through the classroom door, then sat in her car for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. She needed to breathe, to think, to pull herself together before heading to the elementary school where she taught. But as she reached for her keys, her phone buzzed in the passenger seat. The screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Jennifer froze. Her breath hitched as she stared at the text, her pulse roaring in her ears. "You can't hide forever." Jennifer's grip tightened around her phone until her knuckles turned white, a wave of cold dread washing over her, sharper and heavier than anything she had felt in years. The message had no name, no context, but she didn't need either to know exactly who it was referring to, exactly what storm was creeping toward her life with silent, deliberate steps. Jennifer swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she locked the phone and tossed it onto the seat beside her. The parking lot suddenly felt too exposed, too open, as if danger lurked just beyond the thin fog rolling in from the harbor. She shut her eyes for a moment, trying to steady her breathing, but one truth echoed relentlessly in her mind. Whatever she had run from, whatever she had sacrificed everything to escape, had finally found her again. And this time, she wasn't sure she could outrun it. Jennifer's hands clenched the steering wheel as she forced herself to start the engine, the hum of the car louder than the pounding of her heart. Every instinct screamed at her to leave Harborfield, to vanish somewhere far away, but she couldn't abandon Violet. Not yet. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the quiet streets, half expecting to see him waiting at every corner. She considered calling the police, but a voice in her mind reminded her of how complicated her past had been, how easy it had been for Marcus to manipulate even the authorities. No, she had to handle this herself. Her fingers hovered over her phone. Then she remembered the small, unassuming box she kept locked in her glove compartment. A collection of items from before her escape, the evidence she had never destroyed, the truth that could protect her if necessary. The weight of it felt heavier now, as if it had been waiting all this time for this exact moment. Jennifer's thoughts were interrupted by Violet's small voice from the back seat. "Mommy, are we going home?" The innocence in her daughter's tone twisted the knife of anxiety in Jennifer's chest. "Yes, baby, we're going home," she replied, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. Pulling into the driveway of their modest house, Jennifer felt the familiar relief of walls that had been hers for years, the small sanctuary she had built with care. Yet the moment she stepped onto the porch, her senses screamed that the sanctuary was no longer secure. The lock clicked in her hand as she opened the door, and the smell hit her first, lavender, mingled with a faint metallic tang. Someone had been inside. Her pulse accelerated as she scanned the living room. Nothing seemed moved, but the presence was undeniable, a shadow lingering even in the absence of a shadow. Jennifer backed out slowly, heart racing, trying to think logically, to strategize to protect Violet first. That's when she noticed the envelope on the kitchen table, stark white against the warm oak. She picked it up, her hands trembling. On the front, written in a handwriting she knew too well, were two words: "I'm watching." Jennifer's knees nearly buckled. She could feel the walls of her carefully constructed life closing in. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Every move she had made, every safe place she had claimed, was now within reach of someone who knew exactly how to find her. Her mind raced. Should she call for help? Should she leave town immediately? But deep down, she knew she had to be cleverer than fear, smarter than the man who had haunted her past. She tucked the envelope into her jacket and led Violet upstairs, forcing a casualness in her movements, a normalcy that didn't exist. But as she closed Violet's bedroom door, a tiny voice whispered in her mind. Running wasn't an option anymore. She had to fight. That night, Jennifer sat at the small kitchen table, the envelope still clutched in her hands, its weight pressing down on her chest like a stone. Violet slept peacefully upstairs, unaware of the storm gathering just beyond her mother's careful gaze. Jennifer opened the envelope slowly, revealing a single sheet of paper. The message was typed, precise, and chilling. "You can't hide her forever. You know I will find you." Her breath caught. For a split second, disbelief and rage collided, and then a cold clarity settled over her. This wasn't just about Marcus or the past. This was about control, about power, and about fear. She folded the paper carefully and placed it beside her laptop, realizing she needed a plan that was faster, smarter, and more ruthless than anything she had done before. Her mind ran through every detail of her life. The neighbors, the streets, the routines she had carefully mapped out to protect Violet. Every predictable movement could be monitored. Every small mistake could be exploited. She had survived before, but this was different. This time, it wasn't only about her. It was about Violet, and she would not let anyone take that from her. Jennifer's fingers flew over the keyboard, researching surveillance systems, background checks, even self-defense tactics, her mind a whirlwind of strategies. She knew she couldn't trust anyone completely, but she had to gather allies, people who could act quietly, without exposing her location. She couldn't make a sound. She couldn't allow Marcus, or anyone who had learned from him, to anticipate her moves. By the time the clock struck midnight, Jennifer had drafted a meticulous plan. Safe rooms, emergency contacts, routes to leave the house in seconds, and contingency plans for every possible scenario. She felt the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach, but now it was sharpened into purpose. She wasn't hiding. She was preparing. She wouldn't run blindly anymore. And yet, even with all the plans in place, a sliver of doubt remained. How much could she really protect Violet from a man who had once been a part of her life and knew her intimately? The thought of facing him again, of confronting the man who had once held her heart in his hands while now standing as a possible threat, made her pulse race. She closed her laptop, trying to calm her mind, and whispered to the darkness, "I will protect her. No one will take her from me." Outside, the wind whipped through the empty streets, rattling the windows like a warning. Jennifer stood, staring at the envelope once more, before tucking it into a locked drawer. Tomorrow she would act. She would be ready. And this time, she would not let fear dictate their lives. The next morning, Harborfield was deceptively calm, the streets glistening from last night's rain, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Jennifer woke early, her mind already running through every contingency. Violet was still asleep, and for a moment, she allowed herself a deep breath, savoring the quiet. Breakfast was simple: toast, scrambled eggs, and the steaming cups of cocoa she knew Violet loved. She watched her daughter through the doorway, curly hair sprawled over the pillow, little fists clenching and unclenching in sleep, and felt a surge of determination. Today, she thought everything could change or nothing could, and she had to be ready for either. By 8 a.m., she had arranged the security cameras around the house, double-checked the locks, and reviewed the contacts she had called the night before. Marcus' text from the previous evening had come again, apologetic and hopeful, asking if he could see Violet in the park later. Jennifer's thumb hovered over the screen before replying, "We'll see. She may go outside after lunch. I'll text you." Every second felt charged with tension, a silent countdown to what could become a defining day. By mid-morning, a car she didn't recognize slowly drove past the building, and Jennifer's pulse leapt. She had been expecting someone. She wasn't sure who, but instinctively, she moved toward the window, watching carefully. The car lingered, then sped away, leaving her uneasy. She knew that whoever had sent the envelope was testing her, trying to gauge her reactions. But she wouldn't show fear. Not today. Hours later, as Violet played in the backyard under Jennifer's watchful eye, a shadow fell across the gate. Jennifer turned sharply, heart hammering, and saw Marcus approaching, his face tense but earnest. He held nothing in his hands. No folders, no devices, just himself, as if showing up unarmed was a statement of trust. Jennifer didn't step back, but her stance was firm. "I'm here to see Violet," he said softly, almost cautiously. "That's all. I swear." Jennifer assessed him carefully, noting every expression, every tiny hesitation, remembering the man who had once been a storm in her life and now seemed a quieter, patient force. "You'll stay in the yard's shade. I won't let her out of my sight," she said. Marcus nodded without protest. Violet noticed him immediately, eyes wide as she ran toward the fence. "Daddy?" she called, her voice a mix of recognition and wonder. Marcus knelt down to her level, arms open, but Jennifer kept her gaze steady. She was watching, yes, but also gauging Marcus' reactions, how he moved, how he spoke, how he treated her daughter. Minutes passed, and slowly, the tension eased. Marcus followed Jennifer's rules, allowing Violet to lead the interaction, laughing and guiding her gently, never taking over. Jennifer finally let herself relax slightly, realizing that Marcus had come without any hidden agenda. It was a small victory, but it meant something. He was willing to earn Violet's trust, one careful step at a time. By the time Violet's lunch bell rang, a call from Jennifer to come inside, the three of them had formed a rhythm, a fragile but real connection that wasn't perfect, but it was promising. Jennifer's heart swelled with cautious hope, knowing that if Marcus could continue to show patience and consistency, perhaps the dark cloud of fear and betrayal could slowly dissipate. And as Marcus waved goodbye, keeping his distance, Jennifer realized something profound. The fight wasn't over, but today, she had seen the possibility of a future where her daughter had a father who cared, and where she herself could stop carrying the past alone. The following days in Harborfield settled into a cautious rhythm. Jennifer kept a careful watch over Violet and Marcus, but she also began to notice subtle changes. How Marcus' presence seemed to brighten Violet's mornings, the way he genuinely asked questions about her day, not just superficially, but with an interest that felt real. Jennifer allowed herself small moments of relief, though she never let her guard down completely. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the Old Town rooftops, casting amber light across the streets, Jennifer received another envelope slipped under her door. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, expecting trouble, but found only a photograph. Violet laughing, holding a bouquet of daisies, with Marcus kneeling beside her, smiling warmly. No notes, no threats, just an image frozen in time. A reminder that life could hold fragile happiness even in the shadow of uncertainty. Jennifer felt tears prick her eyes, not from fear this time, but from a cautious, almost forbidden hope. She tucked the photo into her pocket, resolved to protect this moment, this fragile piece, with everything she had. As days turned into weeks, Marcus continued to prove himself. Attending school events, showing patience with Violet's endless questions, and never overstepping boundaries. Jennifer began to see him not as the man who had once faltered, but as someone attempting to rebuild trust, brick by careful brick. One afternoon, as they walked home from the park, Violet skipped ahead, chattering excitedly about the flowers she wanted to plant in their yard. Jennifer watched her daughter's energy, and for the first time in months, she felt the weight of constant vigilance lighten slightly. Marcus fell into step beside her, quiet but attentive. "You're doing a great job," he said softly, glancing at Jennifer with a sincerity that wasn't performative. She nodded, acknowledging the compliment without opening the floodgates of emotion she had kept tightly sealed. That night, after Violet had gone to bed, Jennifer sat at the kitchen table, the photograph of Violet and Marcus before her. She allowed herself a long exhale, a recognition that while danger and disappointment could still loom, she had glimpsed the possibility of safety and trust. Her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. "Thank you for letting me try. I promise I won't fail her again." Jennifer read it twice, then placed the phone face down, staring at the muted glow of the streetlights outside. Hope, she realized, was not an abstract concept, it was a choice. A daily decision to see beyond fear, to embrace what could be, even when the past whispered warnings. And in that quiet, almost sacred moment, she understood that the story of their lives wasn't over. It was simply entering a chapter where healing, patience, and courage could finally take root. Weeks turned into months, and the rhythm of their new life began to solidify. Violet's laughter became the soundtrack of the lighthouse, filling every corner with warmth, bridging gaps that words alone could not. Jennifer watched Marcus interact with their daughter, not as a visitor, but as someone fully committed to being part of her life. He never tried to replace the life Jennifer had built. Instead, he became a complement, a partner in creating memories, small and large. Together, they explored tide pools along the rocky coast, collected seashells for Violet's treasure box, and spent quiet evenings reading by the lighthouse's windows as the ocean whispered below. Jennifer found herself letting down walls she hadn't realized had been up for years, allowing glimpses of the man she had once loved and still cared for into her life. One afternoon, Violet, now brimming with curiosity and energy, ran to Marcus with a freshly painted seashell in hand. "Look, I made it for you. Do you like it?" Marcus crouched to her level, taking her small hand in his. "It's perfect," he said softly, placing it gently on the shelf beside his own little collection. Jennifer's chest tightened, not with fear, but with a quiet relief, a realization that Marcus' presence was steady, trustworthy, and real. That evening, after tucking Violet into bed, Jennifer and Marcus sat on the lighthouse balcony, wrapped in blankets as the sun melted into the horizon. Silence stretched between them, comfortable this time, not loaded with tension or unspoken accusations. "You know," Jennifer said finally, "I didn't expect this. I thought seeing you again would be chaotic. But it feels right, tentative but right." Marcus reached for her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers naturally. "I've spent the last 4 years regretting everything I missed, everything I took for granted. I can't change the past, but I can promise I'll show up every day I can, for both of you." Jennifer nodded, feeling the truth of his words settle into her bones. "She deserves that," she whispered. "And I deserve to see her father be part of her life." For the first time, the fear of what could go wrong was outweighed by the quiet thrill of what could go right. Days passed with laughter, small adventures, and moments of tenderness that built an invisible bridge between past mistakes and future possibilities. The lighthouse, once just a structure overlooking the ocean, became a symbol of resilience, second chances, and the family they were learning to be: imperfect, evolving, but full of love. One crisp morning, Violet bounded down the spiral staircase, clutching a map she had drawn. "Mommy, Daddy, we're going on a treasure hunt." Jennifer and Marcus shared a glance, a smile passing silently between them. In that moment, the complexity of their past faded, replaced by the simple joy of being together. And as they followed Violet along the cliffs, searching for imaginary treasures, Jennifer realized the truth she had long feared. Sometimes the happy ending you hope for isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you choose every day with courage, forgiveness, and love. And they were choosing it together. 6 months later, the lighthouse stood as a beacon not just to passing ships, but to the life Jennifer, Marcus, and Violet had built together. Its walls were bright with sunlight, shelves lined with books, and every corner filled with laughter, evidence of the life they had chosen to embrace. Violet ran through the reading room, her small feet pounding the wooden floor, stopping to show Marcus each seashell she had collected that morning. "Look, Daddy, this one is shaped like a heart." Marcus knelt beside her, gently taking her hand. "It's beautiful, Violet, just like you." Jennifer watched from the kitchen, a cup of tea warming her hands, her heart full. She realized she hadn't felt this peace in years. Not since the chaos of the divorce, not during the lonely mornings after Marcus had left their lives. And now, with him here as a steady presence, as a parent who loved their daughter fiercely and unconditionally, she felt hope, real hope. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the lighthouse balcony, the ocean stretching endlessly before them, painted in the soft pinks and oranges of sunset. Violet leaned against Marcus, her tiny hand gripping his. Jennifer rested her head on his shoulder, letting the weight of the past months settle and release. "I never thought I'd get this chance," Marcus whispered, his voice carrying over the sound of waves. "To have both of you in my life, to be a family, even if it's different from what we imagined before." Jennifer smiled, feeling tears prick her eyes. "Life doesn't have to be perfect to be beautiful," she said softly. "And maybe that's what matters most." Violet, sensing the emotion in the air, tugged both of their hands and whispered, "I love our family." It was simple, yet it carried the full weight of their journey. The struggles, the distance, the mistakes, and the forgiveness that had brought them here. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged a glance, a silent promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. That night, as Violet slept peacefully in her tower bedroom, Jennifer and Marcus sat by the fireplace, the warmth of the fire reflecting the warmth of the bond they had rebuilt. "It hasn't been easy," Jennifer said, her voice soft, "and it won't always be. But right now, this feels right." Marcus nodded, taking her hand in his. "It does. And whatever comes next, we'll handle it together. For Violet, for us." Outside, the waves continued their steady rhythm, relentless and eternal, a reminder that life moves forward whether we are ready or not. Inside the lighthouse, however, a family had found its anchor. Not in wealth, not in perfection, not in the absence of pain, but in love, resilience, and the courage to forgive and try again. The story of Jennifer, Marcus, and Violet was far from conventional, far from simple, but it was theirs. And as the night deepened, with the lighthouse casting its gentle glow over the harbor, Jennifer finally understood that sometimes the ending you hope for isn't the one you plan. It's the one you choose. And they had chosen it together. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales.